Smart carbs. Let's have a look at what carbohydrates can do for us, either from an athletic standpoint of view or even a body composition and health point of view. Carbohydrates are simply just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecules, all put together to make a beautiful, easy, readily available food source for humans. So these can be found in sugars, starches, and fiber. They're all considered carbohydrates. Once we've eaten a carbohydrate, our digestive system breaks them down into glucose. Now, glucose is essential for life in regards to it provides fuel for the brain and the central nervous system, and also provides a quick fuel source for our muscles and even the majority of our working cells. Fiber might be the slight exception here, where fiber tends to not break down very well in the human system, depending whether it's insoluble or soluble, so whether it needs water or not. But fiber tends to act as the garbage man, kind of cleaning the digestive system as it goes through, but we don't use it as a fuel source. Glucose can either travel through the bloodstream, delivering itself to certain areas of the body as a readily available fuel source. Any kind of excess glucose needs to be stored. It's mostly stored in the liver, but can also be stored in the muscle tissue as well. Once it's stored, it's kind of referred to as glycogen. So that's its kind of stored fuel source. And then when the body is ready to use that fuel source again, it can be liberated back into the bloodstream and converted back into glucose, ready to be used. It's important to make sure that we don't just have glucose floating around into the bloodstream, which is a similar mechanism to diabetes. So there are carbohydrate kind of groups, all right? So the way we can just simplify carbohydrates for themselves is into three kind of categories. So you've got your fruits and your vegetables, which are mostly just sugars and fiber. So this could be things like spinach, carrot, broccoli, apples, banana, and berries. The list is many, but these are the main ones. Then you've got minimally processed starchy carbohydrates. So this would be things like whole grain bread, pasta, rice, and potatoes. Again, the list can be long. You can add extra things to this, but these are the main ones. Then you've got simple sugars and highly processed starchy carbohydrates. So these are things like cereals, soft drinks, juice, and chips. So in regards to our serving size, it can really depend on your goal. So for example, fat loss, we're looking at probably 0 to 1 cupped hands of minimally processed starchy carbohydrates for men, and 0 to maybe half a cup, so a cupped hand for women. And then we want to add 1 to 2 fist-sized servings of vegetables to this as well. For muscle gain, we're probably looking at 2 to 3 cupped hands for men and 1 to 2 cupped hands for women. 1 to 2 fist size of vegetables. For performance, for performance, health, and even maintenance, we want 1 to 2 cupped hands for men, and then maybe 1 or maybe half a cup for women, and 1 to 2 fist size of vegetables. This is per meal, by the way. Okay, so the main kind of differences here is that for fat loss, we're just trying to restrict the carbohydrate intake a little bit as a way to encourage calorie deficit, but it doesn't necessarily mean we need to go to 0. For muscle gain, carbohydrate can be really impactful, especially with the coupling of protein as an anabolic, so something that can aid growth and muscle repair. Hence why we need a lot more carbohydrate. It also just increases the total calories, which is really important for muscle growth. And then for performance, health, and maintenance, we kind of want a balance of the two, like a nice middle ground. Obviously, this depends on your nutritional philosophies and mantras. Therefore, if you're ketogenic, you might not follow this. But in general, if we're following CSIRO guidelines or just general World Health Organization guidelines, carbohydrates still fit into a well-balanced diet. Notice also I didn't really suggest any simple sugars or highly processed starchy carbohydrates. This is typically because they tend to do more damage than good. Possibly the only place that these guys would fit in is for muscle gain, as they can really inject a quick amount of glucose into the stream and start to help the repairing process for the muscle tissue, and potentially sometimes for performance as well to aid in recovery. But for the majority, we want to really limit our simple sugars and our highly processed starchy carbohydrates, because it can really do a little bit of damage to our body, and it makes it very difficult for our body to process these forms of carbohydrates. Carbs are really essential to life. Ideally, we should try and have carbohydrates in our diet. Some people will choose not to, and that's perfectly fine. There's a level of wellness still there for that individual, but you do need to consider what your carbohydrate intake is like, because it can definitely work for you from a body composition and a performance point of view. But if you feel like you don't tolerate carbohydrates very well, i.e. every time you have too many carbohydrates, performance decreases and your body composition starts to change, then you might want to look at some of the recommendations that I've made today and then adjust that based on what you're trying to achieve. Thanks.